Let me take you to February 22nd, 1980, Lake Placid, New York. A group of unknown American college hockey players are about to face off against the most dominant team in the world, the Soviet Union. Nobody expected this group of college hockey amateurs to win. The Soviets were professionals. They were fast, they were ruthless, essentially unbeatable. And here the young Americans are. They're young, they're inexperienced, and by all human standards, they are outmatched. But with heart and discipline and something that can only be described as extraordinary ability, the U.S. team pulled off one of the greatest upsets in all of sports history. And as the final seconds of that match ticked down, the crowd roared in disbelief, and sportscaster Al Michaels shouted words that still echo to this day. He said, "Do you believe in miracles?" And then he answered his own question, yes, because he saw it. That moment made people feel like anything was possible. But long before a hockey puck crossed the ice, long before miracles became a sports headline like this, Jesus was performing real, undeniable, supernatural miracles. Not tricks, not coincidences, but signs that revealed his power, signs that revealed his compassion, and signs that revealed his identity. And this is what our new teaching series is all about. 4-week series we're starting today called Miracles. These are inspiring occasions when Jesus did something supernatural, something that defied logic, something that defied science, and things that were usually completely unexpected. Now, I want to start with this miracle today, not just because it's the first miracle, but I think it's almost the most interesting because in this miracle, no one's brought back from the dead. No one's healed. There's not a storm being calmed, and not a single life being saved. We start here, though, because I think this miracle blends simplicity, the sort of simplicity of everyday occurrences, but also a unique opportunity to grow our faith. So if you're taking notes today, I've entitled this message, "When the Wine Runs Out." Let's look at chapter 2, verses 1 and 2 together. Follow along with me in your Bible. John writes, "On the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus also was invited to the wedding with his disciples." Okay, Jesus at a wedding. Let's just think about that for a moment. That means that somebody before the wedding decided, should we invite Jesus to our wedding? If you've been married, you know, how do we figure out who this list is? We can't have too many people. Do we know this person well enough? But Jesus was invited to a wedding. I want you to picture Jesus at a wedding for a moment. Now, I know you're saying, well, first century weddings weren't the same as our weddings now. You're right. They were better. Full of laughter, full of good food. Jesus probably danced. That's what they did at weddings. They lasted sometimes 7 days. Jesus was celebrating with his friends and with his family. I love that. Sometimes we picture Jesus, he's just sort of floating around 2 inches off the ground, speaking in perfect King James English. But this moment reminds us that Jesus was fully human and fully divine. Jesus was fully human and fully divine. And this is an important point to make as we begin a series in miracles, because sometimes we picture Jesus and he's sort of like Superman. Like he's from another world. He's almost an alien force, like an outsider. He can't really relate to our weakness, our hurt, our pain, because he's perfect. But no, being fully human means that Jesus can relate to our weaknesses, can relate to our pain, can relate to our humanity because he experienced them. Now, the mistake to make here is to think, well, Jesus was fully human, fully God. That means he was 50% human and 50% God. But that's not how it works. Jesus was 100% human and 100% God. And you say, Phil, well, that doesn't math. Well, it does for God. We have a cool term for this if you want to impress somebody tomorrow at work. It's called the hypostatic union. It's the beautiful mystery that Jesus is not just half God and half man, but fully God and fully man, united in one person. Think about this. If Jesus was just human, he would impress us, but that's all. If he was just God, he might seem distant. But being both human and God means that not only can he understand us, he can save us. So here they are at this wedding. Verse 3, it says, when the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. Not a question. It's a statement. Now, at a Jewish wedding, this would have been a tremendous embarrassment. It means that they didn't plan well enough. They didn't procure enough wine. Maybe they didn't think people were going to drink this much. But in this scenario, this would be very bad for the bride and the groom. As a matter of fact, they may never live this down. Oh, you remember that wedding we went to? Ran out of wine on the third day. Some people think, well, this may have been some kind of relative of Mary because she's the one that takes it upon herself to tell Jesus, hey, they don't have any wine. And get this, Jesus, upon hearing this, he does not instantly leap into action. He hesitates. Look at what his answer was in verse 4. And Jesus said to her, woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come. He knows that Mary wants him to do something, but he's like, look, what does this have to do with me? It's not time yet. Now, let me share one thing, because at first glance, you think Jesus is being a little bit disrespectful or he's annoyed when he says woman. But that's just our culture, not their culture. As a matter of fact, that's how you would address any woman. He uses the word gunai, and that means dear woman, or maybe like ma'am. It's actually a respectable way to address a woman. You'll see this all through the Bible. Jesus addresses many women, even his own mother, this way. So it's not sort of like saying, woman, what does this have to do with me? He's actually saying it respectfully, what does this have to do with me? This is not an attitude. He's not snapping at Mary. Instead, he's showing us something that's actually deeply important. It's that Jesus operates on God's timing, not human urgency. I want to repeat that one for the people in the back. Jesus operates on God's timing, not human urgency. And that's true for Mary. And by the way, it's true for us. Oftentimes, we bring God our need, and then we expect an immediate response. But Jesus reminds us God's never late, and he's rarely early. His timing is always right, even when it's not on our schedule. Maybe you've been praying, and you've been waiting, and you've been hoping, and you have an urgent need, and you're wondering when God will show up. Like Mary, here's what I say. Bring your request to Jesus, then trust him to act in the right way at the right time. Verse 5. This is so good. To that response, Mary looks at the servants and says, do whatever he tells you to do. The Son of God just said, I'm not ready yet. And she goes, just do whatever he tells you to do. I can't tell you how much I would have wished to be there to see this play out, to see the reaction maybe on Jesus' face. Did he roll his eyes a little bit? Did he smile? Did he smirk a little bit? She knows him. She knows what he can do. I don't know how she knows he can do this. Maybe he's done this at home before when they ran out of grape juice or the meatloaf needed to be, they didn't have meatloaf back then. I don't know what they ate, but his answer doesn't dissuade her. She gives orders to the servants because she knows. By the way, that song, Mary, did you know? Yeah, she knew. That's why she said, do whatever he tells you to do. Now here comes the setup. Look at verse 6. Now there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water, and they filled them up to the brim. A couple of things about these water jars. I have a picture of one. This would be a first century water jar. I mean, it's big, 30 gallons of water. And by the way, they didn't have like just faucets nearby. This is a big undertaking. We're talking about 180 gallons of water. So when he says, go fill these things up, it's a big deal. It would take a lot of people to do this and probably a fair amount of time. Now, these jars are used for Jewish purification rites. These are places where, or things that they would use to clean themselves for these Jewish rituals. And a lot can be made about these jars. And you've probably heard sermons before where they talk about the purification rites and how this symbolizes Jesus sort of moving from the Old Testament to the New Testament. Sort of this old way of becoming clean before God and this new way of coming clean before God. And there's a lot of good stuff to know about that and discuss. And I encourage you to do that today. You could do a little research and find out about it. There's some fascinating things there. But there's something simpler. And if we get too complicated, we're going to miss the simple thing. And that is when he says, fill them with water, they don't ask any questions. They don't make any comments. They just fill the jars. They just do it. Can I just say this? Sometimes we're so obsessed with the miracle, we miss the simple command. And here's a little thing that John includes, and you might miss it. They filled them to the brim. They didn't go halfway. They filled them all the way up. I think John includes this specifically so we can see this is not just obedience. This is obedience plus. This is going like the extra mile. You know, like obedience is good, but obedience plus is even better. Like if you get an A on your test, but an A plus is better. Or if you're sitting in economy, it's pretty good. Economy plus is better, right? They've gone the extra mile. Let me ask you or say this. What if the miracle that you're waiting on is one simple act of obedience away? Did you know that most miracles in the Bible begin with obedience? When God called Abraham, he said, go to a place. I'm not even going to tell you where it is. I just need you to go. What does Abraham do? Ask questions? No. He just went. God told Moses to raise his staff above the Red Sea. Did Moses say, well, let me think about this. I'm not sure if I can. What's good is that going to do? I don't understand how this works. He just did it. What did God tell Joshua? March your people around the city 7 times. God, why 7? He just did it. Most miracles begin with obedience. So when Jesus says, fill these jars, it's just like later when he says, go wash yourself 7 times. Or when he says to Peter, cast that net again. Let me ask you this. What has Jesus been asking you to do? Because maybe there's some kind of miracle to follow in your life if you follow through with obedience. Maybe God has been saying to you, go and forgive that person. Go and forgive them. Or maybe God's been saying, go and apologize to that person. And you have an opportunity to react with simple obedience or to hesitate, ask questions, add your own commentary. Maybe God's saying, go and pray for that person. Go and share your faith with that person. Maybe God's saying, go back to church. Maybe God's saying, go back to your spouse. Often we want miraculous results without ordinary obedience. Maybe the miracle that you're waiting on is on the other side of one simple step of faith. Let's look and see what happens. Verse 8. And then he said to them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast. So they took it out. When the master of the feast tasted the water, now become wine, and did not know where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom, and he said to him, everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then pour wine. But you have kept the good wine until now. This is the moment in the story that everybody talks about. This is the climax of the story. Jesus says, okay, you followed my instructions, you filled it to the brim. Now go take some to the master of the feast. He's like the sommelier. Take it to the guy who knows the good stuff. And when he tastes it, he calls the groom over because he doesn't know where it came from. And he says to the groom, wow, this is amazing. Usually, people serve all the good stuff first when they can still care about what it tastes like. And then once they're a little tipsy and they don't care so much, then they bring out the junk. But he says to the groom, you've done the opposite. You gave us the good stuff when we didn't expect it. This is really more than a casual detail. This is kind of a parable. Because Jesus didn't just turn the water into wine, he saved the best for last. You see, the world teaches you this: live your best life now. But Jesus promises your best life comes later. If you don't know Jesus, if you're sitting here or you're watching and you're not a follower of Jesus, you haven't given your life over to him, let me tell you, this is as good as life gets. And sometimes that's not so good. But if you do know him, this life is the worst that you'll ever experience. Because the best comes later. Jesus is saving the best for last. Heaven is real, and it's better than the best thing you've ever experienced, the best thing you've ever tasted. After this life, no more bills, no more cancer, no more anxiety, no more loneliness, just perfect joy, perfect peace, and worship forever. That's what Jesus is saving for us. Now, the purpose of the miracle, verse 11, this, the first of his signs, Jesus did at Cana in Galilee and manifested his glory. And the disciples believed in him. The miracle doesn't just wow the crowd, it awakens their belief. See, miracles are not ends in themselves. They're arrows that point to Jesus. It's true back then and it's true now. And it's true with every kind of miracle. Maybe you've seen God work. You've seen God restore a broken marriage. You looked at that marriage, or maybe you were in it and you said, this will never, ever work, not in a million years. And God restores that marriage. That's a miracle. You've seen people walk away from addiction and you thought that would never happen. And maybe it took longer than you hoped, but they walked away from addiction. That's a miracle. Maybe you've seen God heal a person when doctors couldn't explain how it happened. Or you've seen prodigals come home after years and years. Or you've found somebody, or you've seen somebody find peace in the middle of their deepest grief and loss. Those aren't coincidences. Those are signposts. Those are things that say, look at Jesus, believe in Jesus. The purpose of this miracle was to build belief. Think about this. It says in the Bible, the disciples believed in him. Didn't they believe before? Weren't they following him? Hadn't they given up everything for him? Yes, they had. But there was still room to grow their faith. Sometimes, even Christians following Jesus for years need a boost in the faith department. And that's what a story like this teaches us. So let me ask you again, do you believe in miracles? Because Jesus is still turning water into wine. He's still transforming lives. He's still saving the best for last. And if and when the wine runs out in your life, when you feel like your strength is gone, when your joy is dry, Jesus is ready to do something miraculous, not just for you, but in you. So others will see, and so that others will believe. Let's pray.